But Mark, let's move on into our last topic, and we're talking about the good old Chicago Bears. Da Bears. And the reason why we're talking about the Bears is they made a little bit of moves last Thursday while we were actually recording Too Old to Game, and we talked a little bit about it on Too Old to Game, which was a little weird talking about football
fun stuff
on a gaming podcast. But Jordan Howard, no longer a Bear. He will be in the teal green, the dark green.
No, it's like forest green.
Forest green of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's basically going to be
teal.
He's going to basically be in green.
The Jaguars.
I said teal green, which they're two different colors, Ricky. But he's basically going to be in green. He's going to be in Philly, city of brotherly love. Maybe he can go have a brewski with Bryce Harper when he gets to town. But the Bears now trading him. They get a 6th pick that could be or 6th round pick that could be a 5th round pick, depending on the stipulations of the trade. Before we get into the main meat and potatoes of how this affects the Bears' draft plans, I want to ask you, as the Bear fan on the podcast, what were your thoughts when you heard that Jordan Howard will no longer be in the Midway with the Bears?
It's interesting because it's like, it's upsetting. I love Jordan Howard as a player, loved him as a Bear for 2 of his 3 years. He did really, really great things. He probably could have won Rookie of the Year if he played a full 16-game season, but he didn't even get a chance his rookie year to play all games. So he was awesome. He was great as a Bear. The thing that we always said initially was that he was a little limited. You know, people wanted to work on his hands, work on his catching. He kind of did, but still the Bears didn't really use it. And that's really what it comes down to me. Could the Bears have gotten better? Should they have gotten better? I would have liked them to get more than a 6th, maybe a 5th out of Jordan Howard, but he's in his contract year, and, you know, people aren't going to trade for that. There's also the fact, too, of that contract year. We knew the Bears weren't going to pay him, and even though I've said multiple times, great coaches can figure out a way to use great players. I think that the Bears run blocking really let him down last year. They did a really bad job of run blocking last year. So that kind of hurt Jordan Howard. But it also it was obvious the Bears weren't going to use him. And if you're not going to use him, go get something for him. People were like, but you could have got a comp pick for next year or 2 years down the line for him when he eventually leaves. But there's also no guarantee of that. You get the guarantee, you use it next year. You weren't going to use him anyways. You got Mike Davis, who can do similar things, but is a little bit more jack of all trades than Jordan Howard was. And it's very obvious that Nagy had zero interest using a player like Jordan Howard.
And that's the thing I did forget to say, is that the pick is for 2020, not 2019. For you, how does this change the draft strategy for the Bears? Because this is actually a draft team, although I know they don't have a first-round pick. I've actually wanted to talk about for some time, but usually people don't want to hear, unless it's like their team, about what they're going to do out of the first round. But the Bears only have, we mentioned earlier, the Seahawks have 4 picks. The Bears have the next smallest amount of picks. They've got 5. You got a 3rd-round pick, a 4th-round pick, a 5th-round pick, and 2 7th-round picks, one of those being from the Broncos. What's the draft strategy look like for the Bears this year? Because they don't have a lot of capital to do much.
Well, I don't think they... I mean, the thing we got to remember, though, is that Ryan Pace has been a guy who he goes and gets who he wants. If he wants a guy, he goes and gets him.
Just like when he got Mitch Trubisky.
When he got he's traded up almost every single draft. He's a guy who likes to trade up if there's a guy he wants. He's a firm believer in that guy's going to make our team better. We're going to get him. But he also does a really, really great job of drafting talent late. Jordan Howard was, a 3rd-round pick, I believe? You have Eddie Jackson, who was a late-round pick. You have Tariq Cohen, who was a late-round pick. He has gotten a lot of great players mid-draft. So I think he can do just fine with that again. So far, he's shown that he can. If anything, his 1st-round picks are the ones that are a little bit weaker. So when the Bears traded that for Khalil Mack, it was a little bit of a safety.
Correct me if I'm wrong. He was after Kevin White. Correct?
Kevin White was his first pick.
Okay.
Yeah, he drafted Kevin White. That was his first thing he did. But that was injury, but still, that didn't work out well. So, you know, I don't really know that it changes that much for the Bears because they weren't using Jordan Howard anyways. So if they want a running back, they were going to draft a running back anyways. I think that if anything shows, the Bears like to draft running backs. They did it with Jordan Howard, then they did it immediately after with Tariq Cohen. They have no problem drafting a running back and hoping he's just going to be a valuable weapon. But the thing that you got to think about, too, is they've got Cordero Patterson, too. They can utilize him in the run game if they want. The Bears also don't really like a traditional run game. They like the flip passes. They like little tosses, shovel passes. They like to do stuff like that. The things that really kind of inflated Patrick Mahomes' numbers quite a bit and made the Chiefs' offense so deadly, that's what the Bears are trying to do.
Well, and that's why, for me, the guy that I feel, one of the guys that I feel would fit the Bears really, really well is David Montgomery. The only question is he going to be there in the third round? Because he's a guy that early on combine, like before the combine, it was either early second or late first. I have always had him at an early second. Guys like Brandon, really like David Montgomery, had him in his big boards, had him in the late first round. Then he has a terrible combine, and people are like, fall. So now the question is, does he fall enough for the Bears, or do the Bears even look for a running back at that 3 pick, or do they say, hey, you know what? Like you said, we've got Cohen, we've got Patterson. We don't need to take one at 3. We'll take one at the fifth round pick. We'll take one in the 7th because we're not expecting.
They might not take one at all.
A guy to compare it. Yeah, they might not take one at all.
They've got other needs. They could beef up like the offensive line depth. Get more pass rush on there. Get more defensive back help as well. There's other things that the Bears can do. And they're a team that is pretty good at pretty much all their starting positions. They could use a new wide receiver too, actually. They're pretty good in all their starting positions. It's the depth. That's what they kind of need. And the Bears got really lucky last year. They really didn't have that many injuries. You start getting some injuries, things get bad. I mean, we saw the team when they would play a game with Khalil Mack, and then they would play a game when Khalil Mack got hurt or when he was playing hurt. And it was a very different kind of defense. Still really good, still top 5, but not number 1 defense in the league anymore. So you beef up that defense. That's what carried them around for so long, too. And that would do quite a bit.
And the thing I am looking at is, because I'm looking still running backs, like possible ones that the Bears could take. Obviously, you're probably not going to be in like the running for like a Josh Jacobs because he's probably going to be the top back off the board. But like one I look at, depending on how running backs go, is Justice Hill. However, not really one that had the most catches he's had in a season was 2 years ago where he had 31. But then I look at Tariq Cohen. It's like, how many pass catches did Tariq Cohen have? Oh, he had like 70 last year for the Bears. So it's like the Bears, yes, they want, especially with Matt Nagy, they want kind of like a running back who's going to be like a receiver in the backfield. And who are they going to take with that? I mean, you look at their draft needs. Kicker is there, but I don't think they're going to draft a kicker. I mean, you guys signed one, but I don't think you're going to, unless it's like 7th round, like, hey, we'll take a flyer. We'll
I
see
actually
if he
would not be surprised
training.
to see the Bears draft a kicker at any of these picks.
Any of them? Or do you think it's a 7th round
The Bears
thing?
were a kicker away from having a shot at the Super Bowl last year. If that's what your team needs, that's what you get.
And Blewett. He just doesn't that name just doesn't ring confidence.
Bluet.
Oh, Bluet. I'm sorry.
I'm pretty sure it's French. But, it's if that's the player that your team needs, you go and you draft him.
Yeah. I mean,
just get the best one available.
Do you think that the Bears, because I'm looking here on NFL.com, they've got, I'll see if the Bear fan agrees with this. Here's the Bears' biggest needs according to NFL.com. Kicker, running back, pass rush, the 3 that we already talked about. Tight end and defensive backs. Do you agree with that?
Defensive backs, yes. I guess I agree with tight end. Trey Burton is a really good tight end.
You still got
Shaheen's never really kind of stepped up the way he was kind of supposed to when he was, dubbed Baby Gronk. It never quite happened. But you know what? Maybe there can only be one Gronk, and now that the big Gronk is gone, maybe little Gronk can be the next one. But yeah, I mean, really, it's Trey Burton, and then Sims is there, and he's okay, but not really used that much. So, sure, it's a need. It's not that high of a need, though.
For me, I feel like Ryan Pace, you mentioned Ryan Pace, where overall, Bear fans, I'd want to say, besides the Mitchell Trubisky draft, most times, I mean, Chicago fans in general, we like to overreact about everything. Like, why did you do that boneheaded call? But I feel like, especially like last year, no one really had a big problem with Ryan Pace's draft, unless I'm just misremembering.
No, people loved it.
The biggest thing I remember, and this was especially here because Mike Rankin was one that hated the Trubisky trade. Why did we trade up for Trubisky?
Well, he was just upset about Jay Cutler being gone.
Exactly. But I mean, there were people on that side of whoa, wait, why are we taking this kid that's not even proven yet? And now everyone loves Mitch. I love it. And
I even said on the podcast before that he should have stayed in college another year. But I'm happy that we have him.
Yeah, because you were able to draft him. For me, this is going to be the draft for Ryan Pace that requires the most skill out of him. Because there's not going to be a lot of moving with the Bears. I don't see them trading a lot. I see them keeping these 5 picks and saying, hey, we're going to try to hit with every one of these picks.
And 5 picks is not bad. It's not a bad amount. As long as you do well with them.
The only bad thing about it is your first pick isn't until the end of day 2.
But you could argue that's when Ryan Pace has been his best.
Okay.
Day 2 and 3 is really when he's hit it out of the park. Because your day 1s have been pretty good so far. But you got Kevin White in there, which hasn't been that great. You got, Mitchell Trubisky, which he's done well, but he still is a work in progress, still getting better. Really, the surefire number 1 he's taken is Roquan Smith.
Yeah.
That's been the best one he's taken, and he was considered the best linebacker in the draft, so that was an obvious one.
The Bears' first pick is going to be 88th overall. So kind of middle to late. In that 3rd round will be that's the only thing I look at and go, if I was a Bears fan, I would just be like, fuck.
But we got Khalil Mack.
I get it. You're happy with that, but draft wise, you're sitting there going, all right, I hope there's somewhere there I like.
We're not going to draft a Khalil Mack in this draft.
No. So you're not.
So I'm all right with having that. I mean, he is our first round draft pick this year.
True, because you gave it up, or you gave him up last year to do it. I'll ask you this: is there any Bears on the roster or any player on the roster that the Bears could use to either trade, not for a pick this year, maybe, but for picks next year? Is Jordan Howard the last one to where it's hey, he's the last one to kind of get traded, or is there someone else on this team that we could see moved this offseason, this season, for picks next year, not this year, or during the draft if you think there's one this year?
The only other player I really can see them doing something to move with is maybe a guy like Danny Trevathan, he was the original kind of core leader of the defense, and then they drafted Roquan Smith. So... And that's on purpose. It was for Danny Trevathan to kind of take things over, and then Roquan Smith would come and take it over from Trevathan, and we could move on from him if we wanted to. And he's a guy who there are teams that could really use a great interior lineman, or inside linebacker, I should say, like Danny Trevathan. Other people, I mean... Maybe if a guy like Leonard Floyd or if a guy like Lynch really steps up this year, then yeah, sure. Maybe one of those linebackers / pass rushers could be a trade. But to me, I can't imagine the Bears really trading players at this point. They traded Jordan Howard because they really had no use for him. They just weren't going to use him. And part of it might be stubborn, but they were sitting there saying, we will, without a doubt, not use this player the way we should. There's no need for him to be here. We can do something with that 6th pick. Or they really do think he's a good player, so we'll probably get a 5th out of it. We can do something with that 5th round pick. We're not really doing anything with him this year. I really don't think there's that many other players that they can really trade unless, maybe like a Robertson Harris, maybe he really steps up, but it's those guys. It's the guys who are relief people or backups who, if they step up, then sure. But at the same time, it's like if they step up, you probably want to keep them.
Yeah, and like I said, this is going to be a draft where it's like Ryan Pace has to hit, and more importantly, I feel like the guys you're going to draft defensively in this draft are going to be more of that backup role kind of a player. Like, I don't see any guy stepping in for, let's say, the defensive end position that you guys need. I believe it's on the left side of the line, I believe. Nobody that you're going to draft in this draft is going to be plug and play starter day one. But
I don't know. You never know.
You could grab
Eddie Jackson was. He was a 5th round pick.
True.
Also, I want to correct myself because I just realized I was talking about Sims. I was thinking of Wims, actually, the wide receiver. Deion Sims is not on the team anymore.
Yeah.
So,
well,
there's that.
Wims. Sims,
somebody already criticized me on the on the comments about it, but he's not there.
Nobody's perfect, right?
Well, some of us are.
But to me, the thing I was gonna say is like the running back tight end position is the one where that's the one I'm looking at, to where if you grab one, especially with that 3rd round pick, either or, can they contribute quickly this season because of Jordan Howard now being traded? Because, like you said, with the tight ends, it's really Trey Burton, and it's like, Shaheen, hey, are you gonna step up, bud? You gonna be what we all thought
he's
you were?
He's a good player, but he's just not that great player yet. But at the same time, there's not a need for any player to come in and be a starter. All the starter spots are basically filled.
I'm just saying, like, for those two, step in and supplement the offense.
Well, I'm talking about more of the draft of just Pace doesn't need to draft a day one starter. He needs to get solid relief and depth. Yeah. That's what the Bears need. They need protection because they're not going to be as lucky as they were this year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I will ask you.
Yep.
I know that we're going to look in depth about these teams, of course, after the draft when we do our preview, but as an early Bear fan, and especially with playing the Packers day one to open the season, are you feeling more confident or less confident than you were? Well, I would say more confident because your team, you've got confidence in it. But do you think you'll be as good as you guys were last year?
Well, they'll probably be at least 16-0 this year. So, I mean, there's a good chance
Super Bears,
they get a nice 18-1 perfect season out of this one.
Why do I expect any
It'll probably happen.
Why do I let that, like, creep up on me each time?
I mean, it's just the way it's got to be.
I was expecting, like, well, they'll probably be, like, 10-6, but then, like, I should expect the 16-0. Every time.
It's a good team.
You always catch me with it. Like an April Fool's Day news story, you always catch me with the 16-0 Super Bowl Super Bears. But this is where you guys come in. Bear fans, let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. What's your thought about only having 5 picks in this draft? What do you think is the biggest need? Is there any prospects late in the draft? That's the one thing for me this year. Maybe it's because I haven't officially dove into my 7th round mock draft. I'm kind of waiting until the end of this week to do it because I don't want to do that first round too soon out from our last mock draft, because usually our last mock draft is the first round of that one, maybe with a change here or there because they come out so close to each other. But is there any prospects in the 3rd, 5th, 7th that you guys like? You guys are like, the Bears need to draft this guy and get him on the team. Oh, man, I hope this guy falls to us. Let us know what you guys thinking down below. Also, let us know what you guys are thinking about any other thing we talked about today. Kyler Murray and his best fits, trades that could happen earlier in the draft. Make sure to hit us up on Patreon, patreon.com/mostvaluable-podcast. Got some new tiers there for you, new memberships for you to get the most out of supporting us at Patreon. Also, go on to Apple Podcasts and iTunes and give us that 5-star rating. It really helps us out. We really appreciate those 5-star ratings, and it helps us get into the ears of more people. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. If you're on YouTube, thank you guys for watching. If you're on podcast services, thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.